Valerie seeks help from a dashing doctor, Walker Jennings, to find the true owner of her land. While her hopes of preserving her ranch depend on it, Walker tries to find a reason to stay in one place. During Christmas in 1941, soldiers are preparing to head off to war with a celebration. Marguerite is dancing with a soldier, but she moves away and falls into the arms of Duke. He asks her for a dance since she's already in his arms. Marguerite lives on a ranch but wants to travel and see the world. Duke feels travel is overrated because the world is the same everywhere. He feels there's nothing better than finding land to raise a family in. Duke doesn't have any family, but he hopes to have one someday. In the present day, Valerie feeds horses at her ranch and is excited about her new maple ice cream flavor being a hit. Jim, her dad, wakes up late because Valerie turned off his alarm. She wants him to get some rest for his bad cough. Jim notices her new batch of ice cream and suggests she should take it to Marcus. Valerie feels it's getting weird when Jim tries to set her up. Valerie's maple candy surprise is a big hit at the grocery store, and she feels it'll be better if they have their own creamery. They have the land on their property for the creamery, and she doesn't like them shipping out their milk for production. She knows they're spending as much as they make, and the creamery will help them get more ice cream. Profits. When Jim keeps coughing, Valerie fixes an appointment for him at the Veterans Clinic with the nurse, Holly. Valerie tags along because she doesn't trust Jim to get it checked. Holly is impressed Valerie managed to get Jim and bring some ice cream for her too. Jim gets impatient about the waiting time, but Valerie doesn't let him leave. Dr. Franklin, who is on leave, used to see him on time. Holly explains that the new doctor, Walker Jennings, likes to listen to veteran stories and not rush them. Walker comes out with a patient and asks him to make sure his wife gets the list of medicines. He apologizes for keeping Jim waiting and shares a look of mutual attraction with Valerie. When Walker takes Jim inside his office, Holly explains to Valerie that he's a military brat who travels a lot. Walker is apparently trying to reconnect with his dad, Roy, over the holidays. Holly also points out he doesn't have any wives or kids. Valerie knows this last part is for her because everyone's trying to set her up. Walker can tell Jim has had the cough for a long time. He learns that Jim served in the Gulf and has no interest in getting it checked. Walker explains to Valerie that it seems to be lung damage from the time Jim served. He has ordered some lung function tests but feels some medicines should help with the cough in the meantime. Valerie calls her brother Ben and reminds him about their Christmas party. She asks him to get the band they had for Jim's 61st birthday. She doesn't know when he's flying back home, so Ben reveals he has a girlfriend. Valerie thinks that's great and he should bring her along too. Jim wants Valerie to have more fun in life. It's mostly about milking cows and maple syrup for her right now. Valerie insists she loves her life and taking care of him. But Jim really wants her to have a life outside the farm. He also asks her to set an appointment with the bank for a loan because he wants her to get the creamery she deserves. Valerie shares her plans for using the land for the creamery. Greg at the bank hesitates since he noticed something unusual on the database. The land of their farm is registered under D Property Company and not her family. Valerie's grandparents were Marguerite and Henry, who renamed the ranch M&H after marriage. She has no clue who this owner is. Greg can tell the land was purchased much later than the original homestead and was bought with a military pension. Valerie knows no one on her mom's side served in the war. She tries to process that they might not even own the land. Greg wants her to find out about the ownership before he can allow her to borrow or build more on that land. Valerie shares this setback with Holly and how she's trying to find proof that she owns the land. It was passed down by her mom's side of the family, so Jim always assumed it was theirs. Holly also finds it odd that no other owners have tried to claim it. Valerie knows if someone does claim it, they could lose their house and the business. Holly knows Walker can help her because he's a history buff and knows all about their town of Maple Hills. Holly also feels he's looking for a reason to see Valerie again. Valerie turns up at Walker's clinic and asks for help. He takes her for lunch, and she fills him in about the issue. He wonders if her grandfather had a wartime friend or some relatives. Valerie knows that her grandfather, Henry, didn't serve in the war. She also knows that her grandma, Marguerite, was an only child. Henry's parents also passed away when he was young, and there's no record of an extended family. Valerie asks about Walker being a history buff, as Holly mentioned. Walker explains that his grandma, Mary, was a wartime photojournalist for a local paper. She kept albums of articles and pictures about servicemen from the area and thought that could help Valerie. He offers to stop by his father's place on his way home from work and meet her at the farm later. Walker awkwardly asks Roy how he's doing. Walker explains he is taking over from Dr. Franklin for a few weeks. Roy hasn't told Walker his holiday plans yet, but Walker insists there's no rush. He asks to borrow Mary's albums for a friend. That was painful to watch. Valerie can tell how talented Mary was from the photos she took. Walker has heard about Valerie's mom, and she admits Christmas without her will be tough this year. Valerie has also heard about trouble with Walker's dad through Holly. Walker feels Roy is set in his ways, and even he is not expecting things to be different with him. Walker admits he keeps traveling and is barely in one place for more than a month. He's looking for his next opportunity in Pensacola, Florida, and is only in town for the holidays. Valerie spots Marguerite in one of the pictures. Walker can tell she was a home front hostess who was important to wartime efforts. They had to flirt and talk to soldiers to lift their spirits, but had very strict rules. That's interesting. Valerie feels the D Company could be owned by someone Marguerite met at one of the parties. Walker knows it's only possible if Marguerite was a rule breaker. From what Valerie knows, she definitely was. In the past, Duke asked if he could write to Marguerite. She hesitates because it's against the hostess's rules. He still thanks her for giving him something to fight for. Marguerite stops him before he leaves and gives him her photo with her address on the back. She asks him to keep it a secret, and he promises to write to her every single day. Ben and Valerie discuss how they had no idea Marguerite was so involved with the war efforts. She never mentioned being a hostess when she talked about the war. Ben, who is a lawyer, has looked over the documents and feels that Greg is right legally. They need to prove they own this land because anyone with a link to the owner can claim it. Ben suggests it's time to leave the ranch since Jim is getting older, and Valerie is working too hard. Valerie feels Ben doesn't understand its value since he doesn't live there anymore. Ben reminds Valerie of her plans before their mom passed away, but they always included the ranch for her. Ben promises to research the deed, but feels they have nothing till they find out more about the owner's company. Valerie is irritated by Ben's suggestion that they should leave the ranch. Walker stops by and asks if she had any luck with her brother. Valerie explains they need to solve this mystery, or they could lose everything. She explains that Ben moved away for college right after school, so it's easier for him to leave the ranch. This is home for Valerie, and she hates the idea of not being at the ranch next Christmas. Walker offers help, so she puts him to work bottling the maple syrup. He mentions he's trying to cut back on sugar, so she jokes about having sugar-free maple trees. We still have a mystery to solve, people. Walker asks if she and Jim have any help at the farm, because it seems like a lot of work with the cows. Valerie only knows that her great-grandparents had help. Marguerite used to talk about their ranch hand, Douglas, when her memory got fuzzy. In the past, Douglas offered Marguerite help with the stables so she could sit for dinner with her family. Marguerite decides to finish up the work she started and asks how he's settling in. She knows the stables can be cold at night and offers him extra blankets. Douglas feels this is better than sleeping in army barracks since the animals keep him warm. He admits that he served in the war, and his injury sent him home. Wait, his name also starts with D. He still assures her he can work at the ranch. Marguerite insists he needs to join their family for dinner because he's part of them now. Duke keeps looking at Marguerite's photo as he serves. He regrets that her address got smudged. Walker is impressed that Valerie is going all out for Christmas. Valerie explains that her grandparents got married at Christmas, so they're celebrating their 75th wedding anniversary this year at the Veterans Hall. Valerie remembers them as a couple madly in love until the end. When Marguerite passed away, Henry was lost and met the same fate a few months later. Valerie still feels there won't be any party if they can't figure out the ownership. Walker offers to help her decorate the hall just in case it does. It's Christmas in 1942, and the men are away serving. The ladies are keeping the home fires burning in the meantime. Marguerite bumps into Mr. Dunfield Jr. at work, whose father owns the factory they're in. Her friend knows that he has served on the front lines, but the Powers decided that he should run the factory because of his education. Duke is still writing a letter for Marguerite and hopes that it might reach her someday. They hear air sirens and explosions, so Duke leaves the letter and runs to fight. Dunfield finds Marguerite standing alone after the factory closes. He invites her to a Christmas party with his family that night. She claims she isn't dressed properly, but he feels she looks perfect. Great. We have another love interest starting with D. Marguerite checks her mail and is disappointed to not hear from Duke again. She still has the blue handkerchief he gave her. Valerie goes through her old boxes and tries to find some clues. She finds a box of Marguerite's belongings and some postcards and letters. Holly and Valerie are unable to find any record of Henry serving in the war. Holly suggests Valerie should post on social media to look for family members who were servicemen. Valerie doesn't even know what to post. She gets distracted by Walker's message asking her to meet. Holly teases her about some holiday romance and feels love doesn't wait for the perfect time. Valerie shows Walker proof of Marguerite's secret love affair with D, with some letters. Walker thinks the secrecy with the initial could be because of a forbidden love affair or worry about their cards being intercepted. Valerie feels lost because her grandparents always talked about love at first sight. She started believing in real love because of them, and now that seems pointless. Walker reminds her she doesn't know the whole story yet. Valerie knows enough to understand that Marguerite was in love with someone who wasn't Henry. She has checked all records about Henry and found that he wasn't enlisted. She even found his birth certificate, so she knew his name was Henry Ashwood. There's also a photo of Marguerite working in the factory. They have proof of letters from Dee, so Walker feels Marguerite might not have reciprocated. The fact that she preserved these cards all these years proves otherwise to Valerie. As Valerie wonders who Dee could be, Marguerite, in the past, continues writing letters to Duke. As Marguerite works in the factory, she gets the box Valerie now has with a pearl necklace as a present from Mr. Dunfield. Great, more possibilities. Marguerite still heads back and checks her mail, and she's disappointed. She writes to Duke again about how he hasn't written back to her yet. She keeps wanting to contact him. Douglas finds Marguerite looking distracted in the stables and suggests they should take the horse out for a ride. Jim has noticed how much time Valerie is spending with Walker and that she seems to be enjoying it. Valerie admits she likes him, but it doesn't matter since he's planning to leave after the holidays. Jim feels plans can change because he never imagined himself as a rancher before he met Valerie's mom. He knew she was the one since she had a glow about her. She stole everyone's heart with her smile. Jim feels Valerie has a similar glow and knows the right man will easily see it. I think he already does. Holly feels that even if Henry wasn't Marguerite's first love, he could be her most meaningful one. Valerie still feels it changes the family narrative because the party is centered around Henry and Marguerite's love story. Holly suggests Valerie should change the theme of the party. It could be more about the contribution of women in wartime efforts with a dance theme party. That will honor her grandparents' relationship and all the women who fought for the country. Valerie knows if they invite veterans from the clinic too, they could solve Dee's mystery with photos from their families. Valerie fills Walker in about the new Homefront Women's League dance theme for the party. She asks him to invite his dad. Walker doesn't think Roy will come. He remembers being very close to him till he went and served in the Gulf. Since he came back, he has had trouble fitting into society. He has offered Roy a lot of help, but he wants to do things his own way. Walker admits that he helps people as a doctor because he can't help his own dad. Valerie appreciates how much he has done for Jim also. Walker loves spending time with her, but clarifies that he doesn't stay in one place for long. She already knows that, and still wants to kiss him. They get interrupted by Ben's arrival. His girlfriend, Ashley, seems worried about staying on a farm in the middle of nowhere. She's even worried about food deliveries not reaching there. That is a valid concern. Ben assures her there will be plenty of food and gets out of the car to greet Valerie. Ben arrived a week earlier since it sounded like Valerie needed the support. He's worried about Ashley fitting in, but Valerie doesn't want to comment till she meets her. Valerie warmly welcomes Ashley to their ranch and introduces Walker as the doctor helping Jim with his lungs. Walker also points out that he's Valerie's friend, which makes them all awkward. Jim is happy to see Ashley and Ben, while Valerie asks Walker to stay. Ben brings out a family competition board from under the stairs, which requires teams of 2. Ben hasn't mentioned this to Ashley, but she insists she wants to be part of the competition. Jim feels he's getting too old for this and asks Walker to team up with Valerie. Ashley changes into something more comfortable so they can strategize about how to win. They take part in many activities for their not-so-friendly competition. They all have too much fun, and Ben and Ashley end up winning. Ashley loves Valerie's ice cream and asks if she processes the products herself. Valerie explains that they need to outsource production till they get their own creamery. Ashley points out how good the quality is. Valerie knows it's because of the grass the cows graze and the water they drink. Valerie explains that the ice cream recipe has been passed down from her mom's side. She has thought about expanding distribution, but it seems unlikely now. She still thanks Ashley for coming home for Christmas, who was nervous before getting their approval. Walker helps Valerie with a Christmas tree and doesn't remember the last time he got one. His dad was always away, and it was just his mother and him. Walker's mom is now on a Christmas cruise with her new husband, and he'll see them in the new year. He admits he loves traveling and wants to see a lot of the world. Valerie claims she has left the ranch a few times, but she likes to stay in Maple Hills. That doesn't sound encouraging. Valerie's family always has a big Christmas celebration, and she doesn't know what she'll do if there's no ranch. Walker feels bad they couldn't find out who owns the land. Valerie regrets knowing about Dee anyway, but Walker is curious about what happened to Dee when Marguerite married Henry. We want to know too. During Christmas in 1943, the men are at war for another season. Duke and his friend Francis are on duty. Duke is still writing another letter to Marguerite. But will it reach her? Valerie doesn't want to give up the ranch, but Walker feels life forces people on a different path sometimes. Walker admits he never thought about settling, but he wants to because of her. Valerie doesn't want him to base such a huge decision on her when they barely know each other. Walker admits his feelings came quickly, but he knows they're real. He truly wants to build a home with Valerie. He admits that he's falling in love with her, but feels like he misread the situation from her expression. Valerie admits the whole Marguerite situation is making her question what she has believed in. Walker begs her to believe in them, but she can't. Walker stops by Roy's place and explains that Valerie didn't find anything in the photo albums. Roy recognizes her as the one who makes great ice cream. Walker admits she's not interested in him, so Roy knows he has no reason to stick around town. Walker informs Roy that Valerie wanted to thank him because she still got some answers about her grandma from the albums. He invites Roy to Valerie's Christmas Eve party to honor local veterans. Roy doesn't think he can make it, so Walker gets frustrated. He feels like he's trying his best to reconnect with Roy, but he keeps pushing him away. Roy makes it clear that he's proud of Walker but feels like some things can't be fixed. In the past, in 1944, Francis notices that Duke has a gift for Marguerite. Duke is sure he will give it to her in person that year. Good luck with that. Marguerite is still holding onto his handkerchief, but seems to doubt it. Holly informs Walker that his appointment that afternoon has been canceled since the roads are too slippery for the patients. She can tell that he looks distracted and is thinking about what's next for him. Dr. Franklin will be back in the new year, but Holly thinks they could use another physician like Walker. He already has a work opportunity in Pensacola, but Holly suggests he might have something better locally. Walker goes through the albums again and finds Duke's photo this time. Finally, some answers. He shows the photo to Valerie, who gets excited about it. In the past, Marguerite returned the pearl necklace to Dunfield. She admits he's an amazing man, but her heart is with someone else. Dunfield asks her to keep the necklace since he doesn't think it'll suit anyone else. Well, that chapter's closed. Marguerite comes home to find a note from Douglas thanking her for giving him a chance on the ranch. He also leaves. Duke also finally finds his way to Marguerite's letterbox. Valerie remembers Henry mentioning that he kept his hopes in the barn. She asks for Walker's help to sort through some boxes for clues. Walker finds letters from Valerie's grandfather to her grandma. They know for sure that Henry is Duke or the D from the company. How did that happen? Valerie notices how some of Marguerite's letters mention D, and then Duke. They realize Henry did fight in the war, but didn't want to talk about it for some reason. They even find some letters where Marguerite has mentioned buying the land next to her family's so she can expand her own family with him. Valerie meets Greg to show him the proof. He can also confirm that the signatures on the incorporation papers of D Property Company match her grandfather's. She has also found the military pension under the name of Hank Ashwood, since Henry was also called Hank by his grandma. How many names does he have? Greg is satisfied with the papers and feels like she can move ahead with her plan. Valerie drops by Roy's place and introduces herself as Walker's friend. She thanks him for lending his mother's photo albums, which helped save her land. She now understands it was tough for her grandparents to discuss the war. Roy also feels that it's easier to forget that time, and people like him want to move on. Roy knows Walker wants to help him, but he doesn't want to talk about his feelings and relive those days. Valerie understands and gives him space, but also offers to buy the chessboard he's working on for her dad. Roy agrees to get it ready, and thanks her for giving Walker the great Christmas he couldn't. Valerie reminds him that her invite for the night still stands, and she also has her ice cream to lure him. Holly is heading home after their shift and hopes she meets Walker at the party. She makes sure to remind him Valerie would want him there. Walker finds another photo of Marguerite and Duke and heads out with a box. Jim hopes finding out about Marie and Duke, or Henry, has restored Valerie's faith in love. Valerie is impressed by how committed they are to staying in love, even when life separates them. Jim remembers how her mother used to think it was a privilege to have someone to share that commitment with. Valerie also remembers how much her mother was in love with Jim. Valerie realizes she needs to discuss love with Walker and runs into him at the party. Walker hands her the photo for her display, which Valerie feels is perfect. In the past, Duke finally turns up at the party where he met Marguerite all those years ago. He gives her all the letters he wrote to her and informs her that he lost her address. He assures her he has thought about her every day since that Christmas for years. Marguerite also admits she never gave up on him and hoped he would come back. Duke knows Marguerite wants travel and excitement and thinks he can't give that to her, but he's sure he can give her more love than she can imagine. Marguerite assures him his love is all she wants. So he bends down on one knee and asks her to marry him. When she accepts, he admits his real name is Henry Ashwood. Since his friends call him Hank, he asks her to call him that too. What is with these names? Valerie feels this is the best Christmas present, but Walker has another one. He knows she's not sure about him but admits he has no doubts about her. Valerie also confesses that she loves him, so he asks her to marry him just like Duke did. Roy drops by their place with a gift, and Valerie asks him to join them. Walker is glad he did and hugs him. He introduces Roy to the whole family, and Valerie hands over Roy's chessboard to Jim. He's impressed with Roy's craftsmanship and feels like it's a perfect gift. Jim announces that he's leaving the main ranch house in the spring for those of them who want to expand their family and business. Walker and Valerie also feel spring is the perfect time for the wedding. Ben also announces that he and Ashley want to invest in Valerie's creamery for her ice cream. Valerie is excited about all of them being so kind to her and hugs them. They all celebrate soulmates like Henry and Marguerite that Christmas.